All right, so we're going to move on to the next part. And this part is getting to know you guys individually. We're going to start with Jay. And I'm going to ask you 3 questions, and you could tell a story around it, get as elaborate as you can. But this is us getting to know Jay. And then I'll do the same with Mike. Your questions are not the same, just FYI. Okay, so Jay, can you describe yourself in 3 words? And please explain why you chose those 3 words.
Intense, committed, and resilient. For anybody who knows me, I'm an intense personality. And it's because I am passionate about everything that I commit to, right? Just because what I've gone through in my life has taught me a certain level of resilience and get through each and every obstacle I've been through from my childhood. For anybody who's known me, I've come from very humble beginnings, single family, single parent home. My dad was involved, but it was mostly my mom who was around most of the time. We didn't have very much growing up, a lot of hardships. I remember walking to libraries to get work done. This is me being 10, 9 years old, just because at that point in my life, I kind of knew I wanted something different. I remember telling myself when I was like 8 or 9, this is not how I'm going to end up, like for real. It was after several things that was going on in my life. So I learned to be resilient at that point.
You went to a library by yourself?
Yeah, man. I used to walk to the Woodhaven Library by myself, 30 blocks from my house, man, like 10, 9 years old, which was, if you think about it, it's pretty crazy, right? But my mom was working multiple jobs, so it wasn't her fault at all. It's just a matter of just, I had to kind of raise myself in a way where if I wanted different, I didn't know at the time, but I kind of knew that if I wanted extraordinary results, I needed to put extraordinary types of effort. So I kind of just was, if everybody was kind of doing one thing, I just went to the left. I just did my own thing, because at 9 or 10 years old, what are you doing after school? You're going home, watching TRL, whatever it was in at the time. But I was in the library because I just knew that my only way out was education. And I kind of wanted that. So that was the resilient part. And I think the intense part came from, through all the trauma I was going through, you build kind of a little bit of resentment and angst. And, even as a young person, teenager, as an adult, you kind of get angry at yourself for not having some of the, why couldn't things be a little easier on me? Why couldn't things be, why do I have to go through this just to get through like just above average sometimes, right? Just to keep my head over water. And I think that, I've just committed to everything I've wanted, through that, through education, through sports, through, my friendships I've developed, relationships. I'm just kind of a committed person. And sometimes my intensity comes out in a way where people think I'm angry at them, but I'm really not. I'm just really passionate. I mean, Mike knows how committed I am to the podcast, and this is not a perfect relationship. Me and him have arguments here and there, but it's never, Mike is someone who understands where I'm coming from, shout out to him. And it's not because I'm a person who is just angry, but it's just a person that when my passion and when I'm committed to something, I'm pretty intense about it. And for those who know me, if I don't react to a certain situation and I'm not intense, that probably tells you I really don't give a like I really, and that's when you should be worried about, like, does this person really care about what I'm doing, or does this person care about my position in my life? So I think it takes people to really adjust to who I am, and I've kept the same groups of friends for long periods of time. So if I consider you a real friend, you're probably there with me my entire life. So at first it's an adjustment period, but once you get to know who I am, you don't get offended. Like Mike doesn't get offended by now at this point. Right? You can tell by the way the first time you definitely got offended, but like, you don't get offended anymore, right? It's just like, okay, this guy's not coming from a place of like trying to hurt me, but rather from a place of like just intense passion. So resilient, intense, and committed is pretty much the way I would probably describe myself.
Amazing. Okay, so the next question is from Mike. When you were younger, what did you want to be when you were younger? What did you want to be? So like career wise, or what was your aspiration?
Yeah. It probably changed throughout the years, or it changed as the wind blows. And I guess that's kind of how I am now. Like, I want to do a little bit of everything. Like, I can't be boxed in. So when I was younger, at first I wanted to be a forensic scientist. And I guess because my mom, she always like watch CSI and all that to solve murders. So like I always wanted to be that person to like, let me swipe the DNA or the fingerprints or something like that. But it changed. And then I actually wanted to be a lawyer. I told you just before. Wanted to be an NBA player, had hoop dreams. And just now, like I have my tech career, but I'm also into podcasting. I love fashion. So I have different things I want to dip and dabble in. We have one life to live, so I feel like, I could do everything. So
nice. Okay, Jay, what is your favorite childhood memory, and can you tell us the story?
Wow. I remember one time my mom took a day off. I forgot what holiday it was in New York. So as I told you in the last segment, my mom was working 2 jobs at all times, right? So we didn't really have a lot of family time. But I remember this one particular day she took the day off to take us to Central Park. And I lived in Queens. So getting to Central Park at the time was like 10, 11 years old. It took us like an hour to get there. And I remember she made a whole day out of it. Took us to a diner in downtown somewhere. And then just kind of like... I was a big dessert guy. I was severely overweight when I was younger, so I loved dessert at all times of the day. So I remember we had breakfast, then we got some desserts, and then we went to Central Park, walked around Central Park all the time before I visited my aunt up in Washington Heights, and we got like good Dominican food dinner there. I remember just having that day with her was very soothing for the soul. And I remember like, despite my maybe, just seeing that sacrifice that she made for that day, just to hang out with me and my brother at that day was just something I'll never forget, because I knew, I was very cognizant of the time being the older brother, how difficult things could be for us, but for her not to care and just to have that memory, because she said like, I remember her telling us, I won't ever have you guys this young ever again. Mm-hmm. And I remember she's like, even to today's day, my mom's like, I always see the baby in you. I never see you as an adult. So I'm not a parent, but I can, now that my brother's a parent, he's like, I'm always going to remember my niece or his daughter this age. So that always kind of resonated with me. And, whenever I want to take myself back to my soft boy era, I kind of think about that to soften me up a little bit.
Soft boy era. We love that. Okay, Mike. What's your favorite memory with your late mother?
We have so many. Let me see. To pin down one.
Oh, and can you tell us the story, please?
Let me see. We have so many. Honestly, I can't think of just one that's the best, because but I'll just pick one that's recently. What is it? Went to a comedy show. So our things are just like going to comedy shows, laughing, having fun. When we people watch, cracking jokes on people. So went to a show, and who was the guy? What? I forget the comedian, because we go to so many comedy shows. But it was in the Bronx. We recently went, and we just had a good old time. And like my mom used to drink. So, but her energy is so dope that like I'm there having my cocktail and all that, and it's just me and her, mother and son date, and she's just lit. The DJ's playing music in the intermission, and she's up, and I'm like, Ma, did you drink or did you slip some? She's like, Nah, I'm happy off of life, and she's just, and it was kind of like not embarrassing, but I'm like, oh Ma, you making a show, and like people was just loving it, coming up to dance with her and just vibing with her. So, that was one of them.
Amazing. May she rest in peace. Okay, so Jay, if you had a superpower, actually, I'm going to say if you had 3 superpowers, what would they be? And why?
Superpower. Wow. Time travel. I don't regret a lot of things that I've done in my life, but there's some things I would have done differently. Just having... some experience I would have told myself, or I would have told other people to do things differently. Just knowing how some people kind of ended up now, I wish I had the ability to maybe tell them and be a little bit more forceful, or kind of prevent certain situations in their life so they don't have to go back to that. Another one's a healing power. It doesn't have to necessarily be like physically healing, but maybe a lot of people that I've met have gone through a lot of emotional trauma, psychological trauma, and I see how it's kind of stunted them as an adult, and it makes me sad for them. And I wish I can kind of heal that for them. And another one's flying, but not to try to physically pick someone up, because sometimes when somebody feels like they're rock bottom, I feel like sometimes they need a little pick me up. And yeah, like, you know, like obviously me flying, I could fly over traffic in New York or Dubai, so that would help. But like, you know, sometimes just to take someone around and fly them up around could probably help them out.
Okay, so Mike, what's something you find interesting about your character that you're grateful for? So for example, discipline, or you are routine. Like, what's something about your character that you are like grateful for?
I'm grateful for my positivity. Like, I never see the negative in anything. Like, and it could come from, you know, a serious situation to like just a simple, if we get stood up at the studio, it's like, all right, let's make some content out of this, you know? And so, you know, that ignorance of just like, let's be positive, like something can always come good. That's taken me a long way. You know, coming from where I come from, where there's not a lot of positivity or positive images that we see, is, you know, just being ignorant to that and like, no, I could do this, or I could be this person, or why not? I could live in Dubai, Abu Dhabi. So, yeah.
Yeah, I have to second that for sure. That's one of his most powerful character traits for sure. Always keeping a smile. And also you're able to radiate a lot of energy to a lot of other people, which is good.
Okay, so Jay, tell us a story about a time that you thought things were going completely bad, but they changed over and it worked out for the best.
Man, there's been so many moments like that. I think if I have to pick one time, when I first came to Abu Dhabi, it was only supposed to be a 6-month stint, and it ended up being extended. And I remember somewhere along the way, I don't know where, like month 9, year 1, I just got into like this really bad mental rut, and I gained a bunch of weight, didn't feel good about myself, felt like probably the lowest point I've been as an adult, for sure. And then, you know, looking back at it, that's when I really found my resilience. Like if I was able to get through that, and I almost left the UAE because of that time, and I was contemplating, but had it not been because of that, I would have not found the podcast. I would have never met Mike. I saved a whole bunch of money, so right now I'm straight financially, like great. Right. I met a bunch of people. It opened a whole bunch of opportunities that I'm currently exploring right now. So getting through that bad period in my life where I felt alone, I didn't really like myself at the time. I was pretty much like not depressed, because I don't want to offend anybody who goes through real depression, but pretty saddened at the time, and just felt isolated. And, you know, had it not been for me getting myself, my lovely girlfriend who's off the air right now, my family and my best friend who I spoke to about the situation, I don't think I would have gotten through that time period in my life. And I've learned that if I can get through that, I can literally get through anything. So that's probably something where I thought that the world was collapsing, and ended up being one of the best times of my life. One of the best things that could have happened to me to get to one of the best times of my life.
And just quickly to add to that, if there is someone watching right now who is in that mental rut that you were in, what would you give them as advice? What would you tell them?
It's so perfectly okay to be in that mental rut, but you have to, I always tell people, it's not about being anxious. It's not about being depressed. It's not about being saddened. It's about how you limit the time between being in that state and being in the state where you want to be, which is presumably a state of happiness, a state of stability, a state of like mental calmness. I think you have to learn how to decrease that. And the way I do it is by talking to myself. Literally, I always tell myself the the most important conversation you'll ever have is the one with yourself each and every day. So what you tell yourself dictates your mood. So I make sure I have conversations with myself. And for anybody who knows me, like I actively talk to myself. Like, you know, former athlete, Mike, as you probably know, like you always having conversations with yourself. So I'm always trying to be my own cheerleader at all times. So if I could tell anybody there, just learn how to be your biggest cheerleader.
Yeah.
Okay, that's perfect. Okay, so Mike, what is something that you've come across in your time in the UAE that you didn't think you'd ever experience when you were in New York?
Let me see. Honestly, being from New York, it's not much that can shock me or that can blow me away or that I'm stunned at. So, to be honest, there's nothing really. I feel like New York prepares you for anything. You know, is if you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere.
That's really a fact.
And like I feel like this is easy. You know, so yeah, I'm not shocked. There's like the culture shocked is, you know, I'm in a Muslim country or anything like that, but we have Muslims in New York and things like that. So I've seen, you go to 125th Street, you see people with the kanduras and the gutras on. So, you know, it's nothing really.
So just to kind of elaborate a little bit more, when you first came, it was in 2015.
2015.
And there was a lot happening like in the economy and stuff. Do you feel like the time that you came was the best time to come? And do you feel like you were able to integrate into like the workspace, like, you know, in a good way, or was it easy, or was it something you found a bit difficult in the beginning? I'm saying the first 6 to 9 months.
Yeah, no. So the first 6 to 9 months, the adjustment for me was not having family or friends close by. That's the biggest adjustment. But as far as work is concerned, you know, I've worked for Wall Street firms, and that pressure is real. You can get fired. Where I think out here, it's pressure, but it's, you know, inshallah, we'll get things done. You know, so I mean, so, you know, not to say anything about that, but like that ain't pressure. It's, hey, get this done or you're fired. Like if you got that on the line and you have mouths to feed, you have rent that needs to be paid, you're stressed out. You're not taking an hour coffee break, an hour lunch. You know, 5 p.m., you're not checking out. You're on your BlackBerry and your iPhone answering emails 10 p.m. at night. So I think, you know, being from New York specifically, man, it just builds us tough, you know? And so, for me, it was just more so like the adjustment was, man, I miss my family. At the time, I was married then. So, you know, missing my loved one, missing my wife and all that. So that was it. And that was hard. That was the adjustment, you know, so.
Okay. Thank you for sharing.